All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're unpacking what is genuinely one of the most massive political disruptions in modern history. We're talking about the incredible journey of Vijay, known to millions, of course, as Thalapathy. We're going to look at exactly how he made this unprecedented leap from being a blockbuster action hero on the big screen to actually becoming the chief minister of Tamil Nadu. Because look, this isn't just another story about celebrity influence. It is an absolute masterclass in building a grassroots political movement from scratch. Let's dive in. 108. Just take a second to process that number. 108. That is the astounding number of assembly seats his newly formed party, TVK, managed to secure in the 2026 Tamil Nadu election. You know, going into this, so many analysts thought his party might, maybe, split some votes here and there, but ultimately failed to really challenge the established powers. But instead, that 108 made them the single largest party in the entire state assembly. Just incredible.
And that result? It completely shattered the status quo. I mean, it perfectly illustrates the sheer scale of the shockwave we're talking about. For literal decades, Tamil Nadu politics has been locked in this bipolar structure, completely dominated by the major Dravidian parties, the DMK and the AIIDMK. They were the undisputed heavyweights of the arena. But Vijay's stunning 2026 victory completely upended that decades-old duopoly. So the big question we're answering today is, how on earth did he pull this off?
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the political earthquake, then look at the cinema archetype, dive into the grassroots machine, compare his real strategy versus campaign, and finally, wrap up with governing the future.
All right, part 1, the political earthquake. So, the actual mechanics of how this victory played out were fascinating to watch. TVK emerged as the single largest party, and Vijay himself easily won his key constituencies. But here's the catch. They initially fell just a bit short of an outright on-their-own majority. So the days immediately following the election, absolute nail-biters, intense closed-door negotiations. Ultimately, it was crucial coalition support from left parties, Congress allies, and some regional groups that pushed TVK past that required threshold. That's what finally allowed Vijaya to stake his claim to form the government. The machine worked. But we have to ask, where did this machine actually begin?
Well, to answer that, we need to look at part 2, the cinema archetype.
You really have to notice the deliberate thematic shift in his acting career to understand his strategy. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, he evolved from a classic romantic hero into this massive mass-action superstar. But then, look at the underlying themes of his later blockbusters, movies like Mersal and Sarkar. He's tackling heavy hitters: corruption, governance failures, education inequality, corporate exploitation, farmer distress, and even electoral malpractice. I mean, in Sarkar, he literally plays a man taking on a corrupt political system just because his vote was stolen. A lot of analysts look back at those films now and see them not just as pure entertainment, but as actual symbolic rehearsals for his political ambitions.
And this is an absolutely crucial point to understand. Tamil cinema has historically functioned as a massive channel for political communication. Vijay leaned hard into what we call the people's leader archetype. This is that morally upright, highly emotional, almost savior-like persona that is so deeply associated with absolute legends of the screen like MGR. By adopting this specific archetype, his on-screen dialogues and his whole cinematic presence very deliberately began to blur that line between being just an actor and being a legitimate political figure.
Which brings us to part 3, the grassroots machine.
Now, it is so important to realize this was definitely not some overnight celebrity stunt. No way. This was meticulously calculated over 15 years. Back in 2009, his massive network of fan clubs consolidated under the banner of Vijay Makal Yakam. Fast forward a bit to 2021, and we see candidates backed by his organization actually winning over 100 local body seats. Talk about a proof of concept, right? Then, in 2023, he orchestrates this massive student felicitation event across all 234 constituencies, essentially a soft launch for his political career. And finally, in February 2024, we get the official launch of the party, Tamiliga Vetri Kazhagam, or TVK.
So how exactly did those fan clubs operate on the ground? Well, honestly, exactly like the early political mobilization models used by the dominant Dravidian parties. We're talking boots-on-the-ground tactics. They were out there conducting regular blood donation camps, distributing educational aid to students, executing highly organized flood relief operations, running general welfare programs, and, crucially, building highly disciplined, booth-level volunteer networks. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. He essentially converted a massive, passionate fan base into a highly effective, welfare-distributing political infrastructure.
And we've got to talk about the timing. Because his timing was absolutely impeccable. Why did this highly organized strategy work so well right at this specific moment? Simply put, he was stepping into a massive generational youth vacuum. Look, following the deaths of those towering traditional leaders, stalwarts like M. Karunanidhi and J. Jayalalitha, you had this huge demographic of young, first-time voters who just felt entirely disconnected from the older, traditional Dravidian-era leadership. Vijay targeted these youths directly. He offered them something that felt disciplined, carefully controlled, and above all, like a fresh alternative.
Moving on to part 4, real strategy versus campaign. When you look closely, there is this absolutely seamless crossover between his cinematic world and his real-world political maneuvering. It's fascinating. On the one hand, you have his cinema archetype, the ultimate protector of the poor and the fierce challenger of corrupt systems. And then, on the other hand, you have his actual real-world campaign strategy. And what is it? Well, it relies heavily on maintaining an untainted image, aggressively pushing anti-corruption messaging and mobilizing the youth. It's a perfect match. The deep emotional connection he cultivated for years in movie theaters was perfectly mirrored in his real-world welfare-based political outreach.
But here is where he really separated himself from so many of the actor-turned-politicians who tried this before him. Just listen to this quote from 2024. "I will gradually step away from full-time acting to focus on politics." That right there, that was a massive, decisive commitment. I mean, it strengthened his credibility pretty much instantly. For his millions of supporters, it showed absolute, unwavering seriousness. He wasn't playing around. And for his critics, well, it signaled an unyielding ambition that they couldn't just brush off.
So if we take a step back and really analyze this master plan, we can distill the whole thing into this brilliant 5-step playbook. Step 1, build undeniable cultural dominance through cinema. Step 2, create a robust, welfare-based fan infrastructure. Step 3, slowly, gradually introduce pointed political themes into your art. Step 4, strike and enter the political arena exactly during a leadership vacuum. And finally, step 5, completely convert that massive fandom into precise, organized electoral mobilization. I mean, as a structural approach to gaining political power, it's just incredible to study.
And that brings us to our final section, Part 5, Governing the Future.
Now, as neutral observers of all this, we absolutely have to look at what the critics are pointing out, because the immediate challenges ahead are severe. Unlike someone who has spent decades grinding away in the legislature, Vijay is coming in with a total lack of prior political experience. Naturally, there are intense questions regarding the actual ideological depth of his party, TVK, and their overall administrative preparedness to run a state government. And perhaps the biggest hurdle, how on earth will he balance these massive, sky-high populist expectations against the harsh economic realities and the daily pressures of holding together a coalition?
And honestly, that brilliantly sets up the ultimate question we want to leave you with today. We have seen firsthand how effectively this meticulously built grassroots machine, combined with that powerful silver screen archetype, managed to actually win the election. But can charisma and an infrastructure built originally by movie fans actually govern a highly complex and fiercely competitive state? Only time will tell for sure, but one thing is absolutely certain. Vijay has fundamentally and permanently altered the landscape of Tamil Nadu politics. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and we'll catch you in the next one.